Well, thank you all so much for joining us today as Kentucky Spin presents Charting the Life Course series. This is part one of five that we will be doing over the course of the next few Thursdays. So I hope you've registered for all of them because one builds upon the other. Today, we are going to be talking about creating a portfolio for exploring. My name is Stella Beard. I'm the Assistant Director for Kentucky Spin. And so before we get started today, I want to give you a little bit of information about Kentucky Spin, but I also want to tell you a little bit about what all is available on our dashboard. On the right-hand side of your screen, you will see a dashboard, and one of the boxes is called questions. Throughout the presentation today, if you have a question, please type that in the question box. Kelly Smith, who is our training coordinator, will be doing the presentation today, and I will be monitoring and looking for questions. And so we will pause throughout the presentation if you have a question, and be sure and let Kelly or myself answer that for you. Also, you will see another tab that says handouts. You will find three handouts along with the PowerPoint. Kelly will be talking about a few of them throughout the presentation, but we will also send a follow-up email this afternoon that will have all of the handouts, the PowerPoint, and also a link to the video that we will be showing you all shortly. So just to give you a little information about Kentucky Spin, Kentucky Spin is the Kentucky Special Parent Involvement Network. We are funded by the U.S. Department of Education. We are the Parent Training and Information Center for the state of Kentucky, and we have been the PTI in Kentucky since 1988. The PTI, the Parent Training and Information Centers, are mandated through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Every state has one, and some states have more than one depending on their size. We work with families who have children birth through age 26, who have all types of disabilities, and we work with families, parents, professionals, and also youth who have an intellectual or developmental disability. We do not act as attorneys. However, we empower families to effectively advocate for their children, and we provide peer support to help families access needed information and resources. One of the amazing things about Kentucky Spin is all of our staff and consultants are either family members who have a child or an adult with an intellectual developmental disability, or are a person with a disability or a sibling with a disability. So that gives us a wonderful avenue in order to help advocate for families across Kentucky. So Kelly, can you hear me? I'm going to turn it over to you and let you share a little bit about what we are trying to do here with introducing the life course framework, and then I'll let you get started.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. My name is Kelly Smith. I am the training coordinator for Kentucky Spin, and I'm very excited to be with you today discussing charting the life course materials. There are not enough good words in the world to describe charting the life course. I have used charting the life course tools with my son, who is 23 and he has a traumatic brain injury. We did not know about these tools when he was, growing up and going through high school and those age ranges. If I had of, his life would have probably, looked differently than it does. But we have used these tools since he's gotten out of high school, and they're extremely beneficial. And something that we'll talk about here in just a little bit is that this is not only something for individuals with disabilities. This can be used by anyone. I can honestly tell you that there are many times that I should use these tools to make decisions or to identify support, especially just as a working adult with, very busy. We have a lot of family and lots of times we need to really be able to focus in on some things and set some goals for ourselves. And that's what starting the life course is all about. And so we're about to watch a video. It's about 17 minutes. But the reason for the 17-minute video is that in the 17 minutes that they're explaining charting the life course, what they explain in that 17 minutes, I couldn't explain in 17 hours. So that's why we're going to view this video, and then you're also going to receive the link to the video later this afternoon. So with further ado, let's get started, Stella.
Kelly, just real quick, I'm going to start the video, but I'm having a little difficulty hearing you. It's kind of going in and out. So maybe you can work on that a little bit while the video is showing.
Absolutely.
All right, here we go.
Hi, my name is Shelley Reynolds, and I work at the University of Missouri Kansas City Institute for Human Development. In my role at the Institute, I'm the director of the Individual Advocacy and Family Support Team, where I've worked with families, self-advocates, and professionals for the last 20 years to really identify what their issues are around problem solving and planning, and how we can better support them in those roles. What brought me to the Institute for Human Development, though, was my passion for really helping people have good lives. This came not only from my schooling, but more importantly, because of the fact that I have a brother with a developmental disability who's now in his 30s. Through my day-to-day experience of growing up as a sibling, and also as I got older, serving in the role of really helping to understand, support, navigate them, and work with other people to really help Eric have the life that he wants, really serves as a foundation for much of the work that I do. One of the core principles of the Life Course framework is really, how is the work driven by self-advocates and families? What's key to our work is really understanding what it is that they need in their lives so we can figure out the practices and policies to best support that. Everything that you will see today is driven by those voices and those needs. So now I'm going to provide an overview of the Life Course framework that we use to really guide our thinking and how we develop the tools that we use. At the core of this framework is the belief that all people have the right to live, love, work, and play, and pursue their dreams as all others in their community. What's really important about this belief is that there was a time where people with developmental disabilities didn't have access to these rights. So this framework really highlights the fact that everyone has this same right as a citizen in the United States. The other importance of that core belief is the concept of all. And I want to kind of take you to really understanding what we mean when we start talking about all. When we first set out to develop this framework, we wanted to really recognize that when we're talking about people specifically with developmental disabilities, we aren't just talking about those that receive services, but rather all people, the 4.7 million people that are estimated to have a developmental disability in the United States. As we developed the framework, though, we realized this framework was something that was much more universal, that could be used for all people. It could be used for family members, it could be used for grandparents, it could be used by siblings, for lots of different reasons, not only for the reason of helping people with developmental disabilities. So I'd like to set the stage so that you understand why we needed to come up with this framework. If you look at the circles on the left and just think about your own life, you're an individual person, you have family, you have friends, you exist in a community. And if you start thinking about those with developmental disabilities and how they've received supports over the years, you start realizing that you have the person, you have services wrapped around them, sometimes special education, sometimes adult services. Then you have the family and the community. And as we got focused more and more on those services, what we soon realized was that it was the person being cut off from their family and friends, which was exactly what we did not intend to do with our support system. So this framework really recognizes that and really attempts to figure out a way that how can we support people within the context of their family, their friends, and their community. So if you look at the circles on the right-hand side, you'll see the image there that we're trying to achieve. We want to help people be where they are with the families and friends around them and the community they live in, but figure out a way to integrate services and supports so they can have the good life that they're desiring. One of the reasons that we believe that integrated services and supports are so important are that there are many things that are changing. There's pressures coming from lots of different ways. We have self-advocates and families really demanding that their rights are recognized as citizens in this country. We also have the response of federal infrastructure that really supports those rights to live in the community, have employment, have friends, and be a part of the society. But there's also other realities. We know that there's not enough money in the world for every person with a developmental disabilities to have all of the services that they desire. So we need to think differently. We need to figure out a way to develop an infrastructure so that everyone can have a good life, but utilizing lots of types of supports. What we also know is there's a lot of changing demographics. We know that baby boomers are getting older. They are going to require supports and services, and they're going to have a demand for them differently as well. We also know that the pool of people providing these supports is getting smaller and smaller, which is really causing us to have a crisis in terms of the day-to-day supports and how they're provided to people. All of these things combined together really cause us to need to think differently about how services and supports are offered in our country. So we keep talking about this phrase, integrated services and supports, but what does that really mean? Well, we utilize the STAR, or if you can think about it, the 5 points of a STAR, to really think about how we can have the good life that we want. If you think about it, the first part of the STAR is really thinking about what personal strengths and assets are you bringing to the table? What skills and ability, what interests do you have? What resources do you have? But we also need to really be paying attention to how are we using technology? Many of you use technology for day-to-day things. How are we using technology to get through the day? Or even maybe to provide some form of long-term supports? How are we using technology for adaptive equipment to help us do the day-to-day activities? We also know there's people in our lives. We call that relationship-based supports. Who's available? Who's a part of your life? Who really helps you get by day to day? We also know the community. We have community-based supports. These are places that anybody goes to. You can use the bus. You can go to the YMCA. You can go to your faith-based organization. You can go to the movie theater. All of those types of places really curate to the supports to having a good life. But what we most commonly think about when we're thinking about people with developmental disabilities is the last one. And that's the former eligibility-based service system. We often go straight there before we start thinking about the other types of supports. And if you go back to our statistics of really thinking about people with developmental disabilities, we know only 1 in 4 people may have access to long-term services. So that requires us to think very differently. So if only 1 in 4 are going to access that, we still have other people that we have to strategize with to really think about how to create a good life. The other thing that's really important to think about is where people live. You know, if I go out and I talk to people out on the street and I start saying, well, where do people with developmental disabilities live? Oftentimes the citizen would say to me, I don't know, a group home, or doesn't the government take care of them? But the reality is that over 89% of people with developmental disabilities live at home with their families, live in their own home, are somehow connected to their families. Most people with developmental disabilities don't move out into some form of eligibility-based living. As the field continues to evolve and really focus on providing person-centered supports, we really need to think about what that means. Providing person-centered supports doesn't mean ignoring the family or ignoring what we would call the context of that family. If you think about your own life, your family's had a big impact on you, whether you could talk to your family currently or not. Your hobbies, your likes, your dislikes, your history, the people you know, all really comes from your family and how you grew up. But you also think about it, your expectations, your aspirations are impacted by your family. Your family also brings to it a certain sense of culture, a certain sense of membership, a certain sense of like where and how you see the world. So to truly provide person-centered supports, whether you're doing that in long-term services, whether you're doing that in the educational settings with IEPs or individualized education plans, we really need to be thinking about the person in the context of their family. When we're thinking about family, For some people, that actually might mean the members of the family. Who's actually at the table, helping provide day-to-day supports, helping to think through those day-to-day supports, or really, who's there just to love and care for a person? When we think about the family, what we're trying to understand is sort of the reciprocal roles they have to each other. Family members love and care about each other. They know their history. They have a long-term commitment to them, as well as providing that day-to-day support. And if you think about it, as a family member, my mom provided a lot of support to me when I was a baby and as I was growing older. And as I was getting older, we sort of reciprocated, or we did it for each other. Sometimes I emotionally supported her. Sometimes she financially supported me. And so that's what we mean by reciprocal role. And even if you look into aging, oftentimes family members are providing supports to their moms and dads and their grandparents. So this reciprocal role of being in each other's lives is so very, very important. So at the core of our framework is really understanding not only the person's desires, but how that really fits into both the family members' desires and that whole family. So now that we know who we're talking about, we're not only talking about the person, maybe with a disability, but also the family members. We really need to understand what are the three things that they need. And we talk about these in terms of buckets. We know that people need information. They need the skills and they need an awareness about what's possible. They need to understand the services and supports and how they can help people get to their desired outcome. But we also know that people need peer support. They need to be connected to one another. They need that emotional support to really get out of bed each day. So sometimes that might mean having someone to call on the phone. Sometimes that might mean a support group. Sometimes that might mean going to a place that totally included you and made you feel a part of their community. We have to really pay attention to that second bucket of support. What our field typically thinks about when they're thinking about supporting the person or their family, though, is the third bucket. And that third bucket is goods and services. The goods and services are the day-to-day things you need to get by. So it could be financial support. It could be the day-to-day caregiving or the support needs that you might have. It might be the accommodations. It could even be support for the caregiver to have health and wellness to ensure that they can take care of themselves so they can take care of their family. So we're thinking about our key principles. These three support buckets are something that we believe all people need. So many of the things that I've already talked to you about are probably things that maybe you knew about or you have access to. But one of the new things that the Life Course framework brings to the conversation is really talking about this concept called the trajectory. And the reason we think it's so important is that a lot of times in the disability field, we start thinking about services not proactively, but rather they're very crisis driven. They're when something's wrong or something needs to change. And then we start looking for services and supports. What the trajectory is really designed to do is to really help us start thinking proactively. How can we help people start thinking about where they're at right now, but also where do they want to go in the future? What is their vision? What is it that they're thinking now that's going to help them achieve what's ahead of them as they get older? But what we also know is this concept of really helping people be able to articulate what don't they want. So if you start thinking about it, many people know what they don't want. Maybe they're a little unclear of what they do want, but they can definitely tell you what it is that they don't want. I ask that question to parents all the time, and they say things like, I don't want my child to be lonely. I don't want them to be abused. I don't want them to be harmed. I don't want them to be dependent on people. We know by thinking about what they don't want and thinking about their trajectory, we can begin problem solving and developing the supports that are important to them. Now, when we start thinking about the trajectory, the other thing that we really want to start highlighting is this concept of thinking about life experiences. We have a tendency to really only want to think about services and supports and what's available, as opposed to really thinking about it. What are the life experiences that are going to get me to where I want to go in life? So let's look at an example. Let's think about employment. Having an internship or going to college or maybe using Voc Rehab are all really, really important steps to a career. But we also need to be thinking about what happens when you're younger, having chores, setting expectations, learning about money, learning about social skills. Those are all really, really important life experiences that are also going to benefit and lead to you getting a job. Without those life experiences, the formal service systems by themselves cannot create the outcomes that we desire. The other key principle of the Life Course framework is really thinking across life domains. The developmental disability field historically is only focused on health and safety. And although those are important domains, what we want to do with this framework is to really broaden people's understanding about what's important to the good life. And what we know is that you have to be thinking about, what do I do during the day? How is my health and wellness? Where do I live? How do I stay safe? How do I have friends? And how am I involved socially? So what we've done here is we've really created icons and domains so that we can really hone in on those specific areas, but also talk about how they're all interconnected to one another. So now I'm going to summarize everything we've talked about today. First, we think about the person. We think about their personal strengths and their assets, their resources, their skills, their interests. But we also need to think about that person and how they relate to their family, and thinking about the context of the family's desires, the individual members' desires. So then when we think about the next ring, what we do here is think about the quality of life of both the person and every member of that family, thinking about each one of their life domains separately, but also integrated. So when we start thinking about all of the individual family members and what they need, we really start thinking about that in terms of the three buckets. What are their informational needs? What's the sort of skill and awareness and understanding that they need? What are their peer support needs, the emotional needs, the connection needs that they have? Do they need to be connected with other family members, with other self-advocates, or maybe siblings, connected to other siblings? But we also can't forget about the third bucket, the goods and service buckets. What are the day-to-day supports that they need? What are the financial supports that they might need? What are the caregiving supports that might be there? So we need to be thinking about that ring of supports. But we need to do all of this through the lens of what we call our integrated service and support stack. Are we thinking about their personal assets? Are we thinking about the relationships, the technology that they can use to problem solve or plan with? Are we thinking about the places that they go that anybody can access in the community, as well as leveraging the more formal eligibility-based supports that are available? So what I just provided for you was just a basic overview of the key principles of the Charting the Life Course framework. I hope that provides you a good understanding of how to get started as you're working on your journey towards having a good life. Do know there are lots of other tools and resources that can help you both dig deeper into the principles to guide your thinking, but also some very practical tools that you can use for problem solving. Check out our website at lifecoursetools.com to get this information.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Stella. I hope you can hear me better this time. I'm wondering if there's any questions or comments about that video. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask right now, or comments that they would like to make?
I don't see any right now. That's what I was checking when the actual video actually stopped for a minute. That was my fault. But I don't see any questions right now.
Okay, perfect. So just a reminder, the core belief of Charting the Life Course is that all people have the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations just as others do in their community. And so the framework principles information page is included in the handouts that are in your dashboard, and they're also going to be emailed to you. And this is great. You know, this is the great information that was discussed on the video. I just wanted to make sure that you see it and that you know that you will have it. And so life stages and domains. She briefly discussed the different life stages and domains. And so just, you know, to broaden that a little bit, you have prenatal and infancy. That's from conception through the earliest years of life or babyhood.
Then you have early childhood. That is the time in a child's life before they begin school full time. School age is the years from kindergarten through middle school. Transition to adulthood is moving from childhood into young adulthood and then from school to adult life. Adulthood is that period of time after we transition from school years through the time we begin entering our golden years. And then aging. The golden years are when we begin to slow down and experience many age-related changes. That just put into some perspective where I'm at in my life stages and domains. Okay, and so the domains are daily life and employment, which is what a person does as part of everyday life, school, employment, volunteering, communication, routines, and life skills. Community living, where and how someone lives, housing and living options, community access, transportation, home adaptations, and modifications. Healthy living, managing and accessing health care and staying well, medical, mental, behavioral health, developmental wellness, and nutrition. Safety and security, that's staying safe and secure, emergencies, well-being, guardianship options, legal rights, and issues. Social and spirituality, building friendships and relationships, leisure activities, personal networks, faith and community. And then finally, advocacy and engagement, building value roles, making choices, setting goals, assuming responsibility, and driving how one's own life is lived. So people lead their whole lives made up of specific, connected, and integrated life domains that are important to a good quality of life. Life domains are different aspects and experiences of life that we all consider as we age and grow. The life domains help us think about the current realities in our lives while also thinking about what life experiences we want to have, which lead us to the life that we want. And I want to insert here that I was, and she briefly spoke about how usually when we're looking for services or assistance or whatever, it's usually because there's been some sort of emergency. And I can say, you know, and I said previously, I didn't have these materials. I wasn't aware of them when my son was transitioning, and even I think I just learned about these tools maybe 2 years ago. So we went through several years after high school that we didn't have these tools, and so there were a lot of areas that we did not consider when he was transitioning in high school. We didn't consider, you know, what is he going to do for leisure activities as an adult. We didn't consider how is he going to make friends. He had a driver's license to get around, but that didn't really help us when we moved into a new town, and he didn't know where anything was. And unfortunately, he doesn't do well with like GPS and trying to focus on the road and listen and things like that. So driving was a serious challenge for him. And those were things that we didn't address at that time. So I highly encourage all of you, whether you're parents or you're individuals working with young adults, to utilize these, and really hone in on those life domains to access anything needed prior to having to handle things emergently. So use it like it was intended, I guess, rather than, you know, like I've had to, backing up and trying to correct wrongs. That is definitely not the way to do it. But I can say if it's too late to do that now, it totally can help. So asking open-ended questions and using templates. The next few weeks, we're going to be sharing resources and discussing how to assist you, your family, or the individuals and families you work with organize and explain what they want the future to look like. and learn how to discover ways to make that want a reality. And again, the great thing about these tools is that they can be used by anyone, disability or no disability, and for many purposes and situations. So charting the life course is a way to communicate your wants and your needs. So let's get started on the portfolio for exploring. And you have this portfolio in your handouts. It's also going to be in your email for you to make copies or fill out and use. Now, when you download them, you can type into them, or you can, print them out and write on them. Either way is totally effective. So the trajectory for exploring is included in your portfolio handouts, like I said, and you're going to use this handout to communicate things that are included in your version or the individual that you're working with, their version of a quote unquote good life, as well as what you don't want out of life. And just like she said, most of us, we may not be able to say what we do want, but we can surely say what we don't want. So think about all of the different life stages and domains when you complete this. Okay, and so here we have just a sample of a filled out life trajectory worksheet. And so you can see, you've got your 2 boxes on the right, a vision for a good life, and then what I don't want. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to start on the left-hand side, and you can fill in along that line as you need to. So for instance, Sarah's life trajectory worksheet states many things on hers. So I don't know if y'all can hear my dogs barking, but I apologize. I'm going to mute for 1 second. Okay, sorry. So the first thing on hers is, going towards her vision of good life, which is the top portion. She says previous jobs at daycares and animal shelters. She has a boyfriend. His name is Manny. She's had her own house for a while. She participated in Girl Scouts, Young Life, and other organizations. And she had a job at the mall. And then also helping her on that path to a good life, she's going to counseling. So in the bottom line, you can see this is going towards what she doesn't want. So she doesn't want lots of shunt revisions. She doesn't want constant stomach pain and headaches. She doesn't want severe acid reflux. She doesn't want to not have any transportation to visit her friends. And she doesn't want to continue to have medical issues that will mean that she can't have children. So you take everything along those lines and you insert them into your boxes. So everything on the top line, she'll put in that top box. So get married and maybe have kids. Have a home of her own. Have a job with a schedule that lets her spend time with her family. Get along with her sisters and spend more time with friends. What she doesn't want is more surgeries, hospitalizations. She doesn't want to be broke or have no money. And she doesn't want to be bored at home alone. And I think that her vision for a good life and the things she don't want out of life are very similar to what the majority of us would have on ours. Okay, so this also is included in your portfolio, and this is your All About Me page. This page in your portfolio for exploring is where you'll document what people admire about you or the individual that you're working with, what's important to you or that individual, and how to best support that individual or yourself if you're an individual with a disability. Keeping in mind this is for your input, and they're all about you or the individual that you're working with. So when I say you, I'm also referring to the individual that you're working with if you're a professional. So this is completely person-centered. So this is not for everyone else to add their 2 cents. This is what you think and believe. So I would like to ask each of you, or as many are willing, in the chat box to just kind of throw out a few ideas about what we could put in these boxes. So what could you put, if this were your All About Me page, what could you put in the box that says what people like and admire about me? I can start. People like my sense of humor, usually.
Type
Would
it
anyone
in
be
the
willing?
chat box. You can type it in the question box, and that way we'll be able to see it. Somebody put, I'm easygoing.
Perfect. Anyone else?
Well, I'll add one for myself. I'm a good listener.
Okay, so these are great qualities. And then you do the same for what's important to me and how to best support me. And again, this is the individual. This is from the individual's perspective. Because lots of times when we're doing something for someone, we automatically think that we know how to support them best, that we know them better than they do. And that simply isn't true. There are lots of times that based on experience or age or maturity, that maybe we do know a little more. But again, keep in mind, this is all person-centered, and we all have the right to make mistakes. We all have the right to experience life's ups and downs. And keep in mind that this is a life course. So there are times, and I'm sure all of us can agree, that we've gotten off course a time or two, and you can get back on. Sometimes we have to back up, sometimes we have to make some changes, but we can always get back on course. And so the next thing is the integrated support star. The integrated support star is the final page that we're going to be discussing. Filling in this worksheet could be the most thought-provoking and time-consuming that is in this short portfolio. And keep in mind that this is just like the tip of the iceberg, just the very beginning stages to begin to explore, wants and needs. So the integrated star represents any supports that are needed to have a good life. The sections of the star are personal strengths and assets, relationship-based supports, technology supports, community-based supports, and then eligibility-based supports. So in the next slide, we're going to look again at Sarah's integrated support star. Okay, so a picture of the name, or, in the center of the star, you can put, Sarah, you can put a picture of the person, however you want to do it, it's totally up to you. So, and again, we're going to talk about strengths and assets, technology, relationship-based, community-based, and eligibility-based. So in technology, Sarah's supports are an iPad, an iPhone, an Xbox. She knows how to use Uber. She can use the internet to search. And then she can also use Facebook or social media and email. Her personal strengths and assets are if she learns something once, she's going to remember it. She's a hard worker, and she can organize her schedule and make her own appointments. So her relationship-based supports are her mom, her dad, her sisters, her aunts and uncles, friends, cousin, her friends, and then she's got their names, her boyfriend Manny, Manny's family, and then her coworkers and her young law friends. And her community-based supports are that she has a job at the mall. And then her eligibility-based supports are SSI, Medicaid, the staff at ARC, and she can use the express bus, and she knows how to access that. So those are just some kind of things that you would want to think about. I know if I were filling this out for myself, and in technology, I definitely would have to say my cell phone. I used to not be that person, but now, like, I need my phone to exist, it almost seems, which is sad and pitiful, but it is what it is. And then I also need, I need a tablet. I have a tablet that I carry around with me, that I use if my eyesight isn't what it used to be. So sometimes I just need a bigger screen. And so I take that with me. Can anybody else tell me some technology that is in their support system that they really, really need and use? Stella's would be Google.
Google is my friend, Kelly. Yes, Google is my friend.
How about anybody else? Can anybody else tell me anything?
Yeah, someone else said Google, so we are one like-minded there. And I know social media is listed on here, but I think that's kind of a way that unfortunately we get good and bad information from. But I know a lot of our young folks, I know my son who's 24, who has an intellectual disability, he is very big on social media, but he also does a lot of Zoom. So I think Zoom is something, especially during these times now, that we're seeing a lot of people connecting with others that way too.
Absolutely. And I know especially, like the court system is totally reliant on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or something like that. At this time, they're using that like crazy, and email. So those things like that, those technology-based things, those are things you really want to look at if the person you're helping can use that support, or maybe they need that support. Some personal strengths. I am personally apparently strong-willed, and I consider that a strength. I try not to let things get me down, and I fight for what I believe in. Can anybody else tell me something, a personal strength or asset that they would like to share?
While we're waiting on someone to type in, it's just a little delayed, I think, for people typing. I feel like I'm pretty organized, and if it's not on my list, it's not going to happen. So I think that keeps me in line and keeps me remembering my day. And I've really been trying to get my son to do that more, so he can remember things, reminders, on his phone, things like that are.
Perfect. So again, you're just going to continue around the star, thinking about things in this manner. And these are going to help determine what supports you already have and what supports you may need.
Kelly, someone said good at my job. I think that's really good too, to have that confidence in
Absolutely.
Your work situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's very important. And I absolutely think that that's a strength. So again, for the next few weeks, we're going to dive a little deeper into creating a whole portfolio for planning. Between now and the next session, I would encourage you to fill out the portfolio for exploring. Fill it out for yourself, or fill it out for an individual that you work with that that maybe would be willing, you know, to dive into this with you. But fill it out, bring it with you so that you can learn how we're going to tie all this together over the next few weeks. It doesn't need to be perfect, as we're going to be continuing to hone in even on this portfolio for exploring in these subject areas. So Socrates said, the secret of change is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So what will your story be? If you could take this Charting the Life course materials, how can you use it to build something new? So I challenge all of you to consider that, fill that out. I would like to just say next Thursday is part 2, where we will be discussing supported decision making and guardianship using life course tools. Also, every Tuesday, we have Kentucky Spin Tuesday tips. These are every Tuesday at 11 o'clock, and they include the latest information and guidance. Topics will vary on that. We have primarily focused on COVID-related information. Let's see, join us again every Thursday for a variety of topics, and you can also see on our website lots of information regarding information and resources for individuals with disabilities, their families, and professionals during COVID-19. We have a special webpage dedicated to that. And then also consider joining our e-news if you haven't already. That goes out on a regular basis to our listserv. And if you have any questions, issues, or you need any assistance with anything, please do not hesitate to call us at the number on your screen. I don't have anything further. Stella, do you?
I was just going to remind everyone to complete our evaluation at the end. It will prompt you immediately to fill out. And if you don't get a chance, you will also get another opportunity when you receive our email this afternoon with all of the PowerPoint and the handouts. And thank you, Kelly. I am so looking forward to this series. I think it's wonderful information, and I would encourage everyone on the call, if you know someone that really, really needs these life course tools and an opportunity to be able to hear more about them, to have them register. We have 4 more sessions, and so I'm looking forward to it. Thanks so much, and we will talk to everyone later. Thank you. Bye-bye.